Wow, proxy barracks. We so rarely see this anymore. Basilisk, Serral in the bottom left. It's the winners match, guys. Remember, whoever wins this gets a first seed into the playoffs, which means they spawn in essentially the upper bracket. They'll get a second life in there. And that's a third SCV. Okay, I mean, if you're going to go aggressive, don't do one of these old school Maru 2 Raxes where you're like half committed. No. Go for the 3 Rax, Mass Marine, pull the boys, and go all out. And Serral, he's gone for that hatchery. We expect a gas in a pool. But yeah, I mean, you don't really see him scouting for this. Oh, look at his Overlord path, Roddy. He'll actually be just out of range, but he repositions it. You always see pros repositioning as they're playing, kind of double checking. If the SCVs move south at all, this will get revealed by that Overlord. It'll be pretty late anyway at that point, so it might be time for the Marines to come down anyway. And actually, picking up a free Overlord could actually really kickstart this push for Cure.
Yep, that would be massive. I mean, I said it's been over 3 years since Kira got a win over Serral. That is correct, but he did get a 1-1 in the most recent WTL Code S playoffs. And that would obviously be good enough to normally move on to the next series. So getting that one map win was big for Team Liquid back then. But that's the best thing that Cure has done. On that map, that was Crimson Court back then. Guess what, pick? We also opened up with a couple of Rexes on the other side of the map. So Cure maybe just thinking back of his most recent map win over Serral. And he's like, hey, it worked on Crimson Court. Why not give it another shot here on ley lines? And as you said, it's incredibly committed. 3 Rexes, Bunker is going to go down. Drones have been pulled. Let's see how good the drone micro is. And let's see if Serral can buy the time. Getting a cancel on that first Bunker is a big start for Serral, but he's definitely not done yet.
Oh, this bunker positioning doesn't create as much of a choke point, like in an area for the Marines to hide behind. You can see he's very paranoid about getting the Marines surrounded, and justifiably so. That bunker does not get cancelled, it gets killed. Trying to build another one nice and close. That spine crawler already halfway done. The Marines, though, look at the way the Lings, they want to wrap around from the north. If those Marines go too deep away from the edge, they're going to get surrounded. But the spine crawler's about to finish. Kua needs to make the damage happen. He needs to make the damage done soon. Serral playing so calm and patiently against this. He's the king of defending cheese. And with those bunkers being delayed, I think he may have held on long enough. I think he may have held. The Marines are going in. They're actually going to commit into the spine crawler. A little bit of a crazy decision. It does force the Zerglings and the drones to continue fighting. Serral has lost so much mining time, and the SCV goes down with just 2 seconds left on that bunker build. But the spine crawler's gone. Lots of drones falling. Serral does not have the money to keep it up. He lost too much mining, and you can see the frustration in his camera. Hand, bit of a face palm, a shake of the head, a frustrated drink of the water. Cure with a nice surprise to start this series. Well, let's go into the second map now. Cure with a nice game 1 advantage. And I mean, this is the time, like, you know, like at this point, you're like, double battlecruiser surprise. Hell, that random timing we haven't seen in 6 months. You know, like, you've got all these ideas of like, okay, what cheeky stuff can you do? Or do we just go for an 8 Rax, you know? There's some good tank spots on this map. Curious to see what he's got in store. And no doubt Serral is going to be scouting like a man possessed. He's going to have a lot of fear knowing that he's got no more lives left. He's got to win the next 2 maps in a row.
It'd be massive for Cure if he can get a victory here. Not just because he would then make it into that upper bracket and give himself 2 lives to have a deep run in this tournament, but also just to get that chip off his shoulder, because he had a couple wins over Serral a long time ago in big online tournaments as well. But we're going back to 2020, 2021. After that, it's just been all Serral for over 3 years. They've played 23 series, 20 of them going to Serral. They obviously had that 1-1 in the WTL, and only 2 wins for Cure over 3 years, almost 4 years ago. It'd be big for him, right? That'd really just be such a confidence booster, and no one is going to care that you proxy 3 Rex. It's just like, hey, I can still do this. I did it, and then if they play again, maybe later this year, in the future, at a perhaps even bigger stage, it's just so nice for Cure to have that in the back of his mind, where it's not, this guy always beats me. No, I can actually beat him too. It'd be a really big moment for Cure.
Yeah, big changer in the mentality. Cure always looks good in his series, but it does feel like late game Zerg vs Terran becomes so much of a contest of force, of mechanics, of speed, of multitasking, and your ability to kind of continue the dance of StarCraft 2, micro, macro, counterattack, defend counterattack, you know, pull your SCVs away from the Lingbane here, send them back to mining, micro your drop before the Lingbane jumps on it, don't fly into the Spore Crawler with the Liberator. And as the game gets bigger and bigger, it feels like Serral has a big edge on Cure. And that's always unfortunate, to feel like, well, I got to do something before a certain point in the game. But I think that's very much the mindset Cure will have, is if this goes past 20 minutes, my chances drop to close to 0. So preferably we try to win before the 12-minute mark even, I think is Cua's best moments in the game.
Yep, and he's so damn good at some of those pushes. We saw it a little bit earlier, and that wasn't even his best. It was good enough against Shin, but I have seen Cure execute those builds even better, cleaner. Obviously, there was no ping in those series. There is a bit of ping here. Game 1, I think, was played on West. Game 2 is on Central. So this is definitely the better server for Serral, where Serral's probably going to be happy to see that everything is normal, and we know that he always feels pretty confident in his ZVT. He's even said a few times in interviews where he's like, well, ZVT feels fine. I guess against Clem it's still pretty hard, but against everybody else, the matchup feels good to me. He still feels that Zerg is powerful, and that he can extract max value out of his race. So I think 3 minutes in, Serral probably able to shake it off a little bit, but we all know Yona doesn't love getting cheesed, and I'm sure he's a little bit frustrated that it's definitely not been a flawless day at the office, but if he can still get his 2 wins, he's going to be happy. But he holds himself to the highest standard, Pig, and perhaps that's what's needed to become the GOAT.
Absolutely. I really actually feel like, as you mentioned, that I've got to do a follow-up with him. Because years ago, one of my first times doing a big long-form interview with him, I remember just asking him, like, what gets under his skin when he's playing? Like, what are the moments that kind of tilt him and throw him off his game? And he just said, I hate it when people gamble against me. And I just laughed, because this was like 2018 Serral, and I was like, that's all anyone does versus you. It's like, you're the god of macro and late game. He was so far ahead of everyone in standard games and late game at that point. Everyone was just doing massive gambles to try to take him down. And he was like, oh, well, no, sometimes. Most of those aren't gambles. I don't know. It was kind of hard to hone in on it. But I feel like he's become such a dynamic, aggressive player who mixes in a lot of gambles himself since then. And I think he's evolved his play style so much in the last 7 years, and he's become, the greatest of all time for such a reason, that he's able to keep up in so many situations. We've seen Roach timings, Mutalisks, Hydraling, Bane. The range of play is incredibly high. I do think he's going to want to lock horns in a frontal battle, though, against Cure, because he feels so confident, right? I think when he's against Clem and he's up against the wall, you really see him get incredibly creative because of the challenge that is Clem in a standard game, where it's like Roach Nidus is coming out, and then he's doing like a crazy 40 Zergling flood when the Hellions are on the wrong side of the map trying to kill all the natural SCVs. I don't think he's going to feel like he needs to do that against Cure, especially when he's down a game. I think he's just going to be like extra scouting, extra safety, spread creep, defend, and just keep on droning up.
Yeah, all of that makes a lot of sense. We see the armory already going down on the side of Cure. It's definitely pretty quick. Hellion count is currently 6. He's making 2 more. Could be a little 2-1-1 Hellbat timing. A lot of Marines with Stim, couple Hellbats. And if Serral doesn't have anything that's good against those units, whether that's a couple of safety Banelings to connect with the Hellbats or maybe a few Roaches, this can honestly become incredibly problematic already. And if I think back of one of those victories that Cure had a long, long time ago, I think in the King of Battles it was, that was off the back of a lot of Hellbat play. Cure is believing in things to pass. The door is open though, Piggy. That's a bunch of Zerglings walking into the natural. That's annoying. Cure will clean this up eventually, but this is not what you're looking for. He wants to focus on his attack. There are 4 Banelings morphing for Serral, and he's morphing them in a very safe spot. But 4 is not enough. He needs more than 4.
He needs a lot of Banelings here. Those Marines are going to cause trouble. 4 Banes are here. Can he focus fire them? Cure right now. Can he focus the Banes? The Banes don't really get the biggest hits. They do bruise up those Hellbats. The Marines are still here. More Banelings coming in. Cure, he's way too deep. And that takes massive hits. He loaded a Hellbat. Should have been probably 8 Marines that he got out of there. That's a good hold for Serral.
It's a really good hold for Serral, and it obviously starts with the activity of the Zerglings on the other side of the map, where he sees that the depot is lowered. Because if Cure is able to raise that depot, move a couple of Marines to the front, you don't have to worry about it at all, and he can just focus. There's a good chance that even those first Banelings, it looked like Cure was handling that well, but you're right, they really softened up the Hellbats, and that gave Serral the confidence to be like, you know what, the next set of Banelings, I can just click everything deep into his army, because all of these Hellbats, they are slow, they will take additional damage, they will fall. That was just easier for Serral than what it should have been. Like, I actually was kind of feeling it for Cure a little bit. I was like, man, Cure could cook here. But in the end, he couldn't really cook. He got
now going 8. He did get cooked, Roddy. 8 rack second factory before 4th command center. So Cure's going to try to go very heavy on the army. But a 77 drone Serral now adding little fun tools. Burrow getting in there. The Massling Bane count. We do expect an infestation pit soon and a hive to go down. But for the moment, Serral is making an abundance of Ling Bane, and Kua has to make sure that he doesn't bleed out any more of these valuable units, because he can't economy to do that attack did not really slow down the Finnish player. With a 5th base on the way, 7 more workers and a Hydra Den, Serral's in an all-consuming position.
Yep. Cure could maybe stim these Marines, and if he's very quick, perhaps he can even get a kill. But the longer we wait, the more the HP there will be on the hatchery, and in the end, we're not even getting a cancel. That's very unfortunate for Cure. Yeah, the best thing that he can do right now is slow things down a little bit, try to get something else going for himself. But the moment you give up a lot of your map presence, you give up aggression, you know that that entire minimap is going to start covering, or is going to look like it's very purple. It's going to be everywhere. Serral's going to give himself an immense amount of vision. Sure, I guess he's just going to have to defend to the very best of his abilities. Can continue to move out with a few units, but he's going to have to be sharp pick, and he's going to have to be a little bit quicker on the pickups than he has been throughout the day if he wants to win this series.
Keep in mind, Kua won the coin flip, or Serral lost it, to be more apt, which is why last game is US West. If they go to game 3, it'll be back on US West. Right now, Serral has a slight ping advantage in this game. Kua had a slight ping advantage in game 1. Marines clearing creep in the north.
Again in game 3 then?
Yeah, right. Why not, right? It's like, what's the one thing that's pure micro versus micro? It's 3 racks against drones and Zerglings, really. Liberator on the north being a nuisance.
Okay.
The delayed Liberator is kind of nice. Just a little pinprick here. And it feels like Serral, I don't know, I thought he'd be a little more dominating on the map and like stopping this 4th from coming up. He delays it with a Burrowed Zergling. It's not bad or anything. And he's still on 87 workers. I mean, Serral is rich. Infestation Pit, Hydra upgrades coming in. He's got the 2nd one on the way now. It's the shorter upgrade as well. So I think Serral's still in a very powerful position. And as we said, late game is going to be favored for Serral against Kua. So Kua being forced to kind of adapt, go towards the late game. It's not his forte.
Decent with a mine shot there, and also good pickup by Cure. Cure finding a bit of damage with the Liberator. In the end, it died at that 9 o'clock base of Serral. Serral's going to get on top of the sensor tower here, so that's going to deny some of that vision that Cure has. Don't forget, Serral has Burrow, and every single time Banelings are this far on the other side of the map, there is a good chance that he's going to burrow a couple of them. Ooh, that could have been
Not
fun
quite.
already, Pick. I mean, it almost feels that at this point, these games, they become so fun for Serral. We also know that this is what he loves, and it feels unfair for Cure. There's so much Zerg. There's so much map vision for Serral. I don't know.
Zerg versus Terran is...
Wait, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're this far ahead, ZVT, whatever side you're on, becomes a much more fun matchup. You know, when you're this far on the back foot, you're like, oh gosh, how do I come back against this much stuff? But we'll see what can happen. Serral sometimes has had moments in the last few years where he does kind of let his guard down. Marine Marauder, Widowmine on the south side. A decent little trade, at least denying Serral from taking that base momentarily. Lurkadan and 3rd Evo Chamber on the way. Serral going to channel his inner dark a little bit. So he wants to head for +3
hits have not been
carapace.
half bad, to be fair. Like, this is important for Serral to keep an eye on, because obviously 1 or 2 big Widowmine hits he can afford. This time he does drag the Widowmine shot over the Terran army, so a lot of these Marines take some damage, but you can definitely be happy with what he got done with a couple of those initial Widowmines. Doesn't really get a whole lot there. Seems like we had a few burrowed Banelings here on the top. Serral was even trying to take that base on the 12 o'clock position of the map. That seems a little bit too extreme, but Serral probably does feel that he wants to get one more hatchery going, whether that's the top or the bottom. He clearly wants to get his hands on one of them.
Playing very defensive is Serral right now, and really Kua's doing a decent job, but oh, he's getting swarmed in the top. It's a lot of expensive Marauders going down, and he was trading so much better. Now it's not 1,800 resource loss difference. It's not, you know, terrible for Kua, but he's going to need better than that. He does have a 4th up. He's going to try to move out towards a 5th base. +2 vehicle plating, 3/3 weapons on the way for him. Carapace comes in, but no adrenal glands for Serral just yet. So missing an important upgrade. Nice Widow Mine on the south. At the same time, Kua gets jumped on. He actually picks up saves a lot of the units, but oh, he does leave the medevacs in the open. Luckily for him, Serral was not watching.
These Widowmine hits have honestly been surprisingly good. Like, it's always going to happen in this matchup when you're looking at one of the best Terrans against one of the best Zergies out there, that a few of the mines are good, but I feel like almost every mine has been cash money so far for Cure. I don't think there's any reason to stop just kind of splashing them around the map and hoping for a couple big hits. And if he can get his 5th base up and running, I'm absolutely not counting him out yet, but this is a big moment. At this point, it doesn't seem that Cure is confident. He can morph it into a planetary. Serral's going to come in from different angles, but the further we go off creep, the more likely it is that Cure eventually is going to stand his ground and fight. No Burrowed Banelings to worry about. And perhaps this is the moment for the command center to land and finally become a planetary.
That was an odd chase for Serral. He's kind of, he pushed in with half of his army against the whole army of Cure. I like the attack up top, though. This could find value. Cure's going to have to pull back from this one. Cure, of course, going to struggle to defend both sides at once. That 5th base sticking out like a sore thumb. It really feels like it's going to be so hard to defend. It is, of course, double factory. One with the tech lab, one with the reactor. So Cure can go a mixture of mines for the Ling Bane, tanks for the Hydras and Lurkers to give the range advantage to the Terran. We've still got burrowed Banelings all around the map. Scan comes in, Lurker goes down, but that means the bottom right is wide open. Cure, the army split a bit too thin, not enough units in the south. Even just a handful of Ling Hydra going to kill some valuable siege tanks and overwhelm this base.
That's such a good moment by Serral to show off with a lot of Lings because it was mostly Marauders and tanks. They are not fantastic. Lurkers getting insanely good shots off on the top side of the map as well. What a moment for Serral, just when it felt that Cure was getting ready for that next phase of DVZ, where he got a couple goals, maybe getting a 5th base. And Serral could not have found a better moment to find these fights. Cure is very upset with those Lurkers, so he goes back. He really wants them, but he doesn't get them. Now the Lings will get maybe a surround on a couple of the goals. We are landing parasitic bombs and abducts, and Cure's army is just disappearing in front of our eyes. And that will just be it. After 14 minutes, just when it felt that Cure was starting to get himself in a stable position, Serral finds an amazing fight with Lurkers at the top. And honestly, picture-perfect moments for those Hydras and Lings in the bottom right side to surround the Marauders, surround the tanks right before that base is a planetary.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what happens on Amygdala for Game 3 to decide the series. Of course, Serral going to be trying to get that 3rd base on location. Cure sent an SCV and a Reaper to block it against Shin. Sniped 2 drones, delayed it for a very long time. But winner of this match gets straight to the playoffs in the upper bracket of the playoffs, essentially. They get the extra life there. They will have a fast track to the semifinals, or, one match into the semis. Whereas the other player will have to play another match against Shin. If they win that, they'll be going to a much worse off number 2 seed from a group into the playoffs. Serral in the bottom left going for that extractor trick into the 15 Overlord. This is the modern opening. Go check out Lambo's video if you guys are wondering why we keep seeing this. This is not the 15-15 build, the 15 hatchery, 15 spawning pool. It's just people realize getting the 2 more drones, it allows you to keep up non-stop lava production. It gets those 2 drones mining a lot earlier. And it's worth it to delay the 16th drone a little bit. You still go 16 hatchery, 18 gas, 17 pool, very standard kind of order that we're used to. You just do it in a little bit of a shimmying of the build order around, and Serral really optimizing that quite nicely. Cure in the top right, not bothering to SCV scout. So you could argue, hey, work against your image once in a while. Go for the pool first, run 6 or 8 Zerglings, and could actually work really well. I know Rainer's a big fan of doing that.
Yep, I'm just smiling a little, like I was wondering if Cure was going to do it once more, if Serral was going to give him the respect that I think at this point he deserves after that win on Crimson Court and the win earlier here in this best of 3, but Serral still just going hedge first, not worried about it. Maybe there's something about this map that gives him a bit of extra confidence. There is an SCV that is going to be sent out a little bit now. I'm confused about the timing of that. Maybe they're going to block the 3rd, right? Reaper,
yeah.
SCV. I'm going to try to make life a little bit harder on Serral going up to 3 bases.
That's so funny, isn't it? It's like, I'm not going to actually scout with the SCV. You're just here to block the base while the Reaper harasses. And I imagine Serral, like I said, he might take the northern base. The northern base is much more awkward. On this map, you really do want the southern 3rd. But, I mean, you'll often take the northern one as a 4th anyway. So, taking it early, probably not the worst thing to do. Reaper coming forward along with that.
It also helps to see the timing of the creep, right? Because obviously Cure is a very high-level player. So he will know immediately if that creep is done or not done yet when that hatchery was taken. So he just took a little glimpse with his SCV, saw the timing of the creep, and he's like, all right, that's all I need to know. Things are standard on your side. But that means that I can just freely click my Reaper to the other side of the map. And now maybe continue to be annoying and get a bit of a delay. But send it all the way home, the SCV. Interesting.
Okay, Reaper dancing around right now. Lings and Queen hanging out. Drone's just going to go north, and he is indeed going to go for the easier base is Serral. 3rd commands are on the way behind here for Cure, of course. Going to go for a pretty straight up standard opening. Serral not falling into the trap of Shin. Not going to build 14 Zerglings here and get stuck fighting for a hatchery. It's just so far, that 3rd base. It's really good utility on the map here for Cure to take advantage and make sure he just disrupts the opening. So he's going to go for the starport this time. It was a 2-1-1 last game, remember, after that 3 command center. But this time, the starport, a more standard opening. I always feel like Banshees against Serral aren't great. Like, it's almost like they're just there to poke out, force some spores, and run home. I actually think if you go like just one Banshee with no cloak might be the best way to go Banshees against Serral, because you can often force the reaction without committing as much money, because killing actual drones against Serral feels like it's just not something that commonly happens, and it's actually going to be a Liberator. So that's a much lower commitment, and I think I do prefer that.
Yeah, it seems like Cure agrees with you, and we can't forget that Liberator last game was actually kind of decent, and they was sieging on top of the 4th base, got 5 drones, got a couple of other units, stopped Serral from mining for a bit, then he moved it over towards the 3rd. Serral, by the way, dropping a Roach one. That's a pretty early Roach one. Circling speed is already done. This is not one of Serral his gasless openers, so 4-minute Roach Warren. Maybe worried about Hellbats once more, knowing that Cure has historically been pretty fond of them. That's definitely not the case. Wonder if Serral's going to do something else with it.
Stims on that way. We've got the 3rd CC floating out. Factory lifting off. 2nd and 3rd barracks going down. Very generic setup for Cure. It looks like something that would go into an 8 racks really nicely. This build he's doing would have a lot of trouble versus like Ravager-ling, because you just don't really have anything except a few Hellions and a Liberator. Like Ravager-ling timing to kill this build from Cure. But it's Serral. How often is he going to gamble on Ravager-ling in Game 3 on one of the longer rush distance maps? Very unlikely. This 3rd hatchery on this top side. Not the optimal place. It's also very far away. Usually taken as the 4th.
in the natural, by the way. Keep an eye on those. Because they had the Liberators there to distract Serral a little bit. And I think Cure was hoping to maybe find an opening with all those Hellions. But Serral definitely saw what was coming. Put 2 and 2 together. And so far, nothing yet for Cure. But at least Cure didn't throw away his units. I don't hate it right now for Cure. It does feel like he should have a moment in this game where his army is going to be big, it's going to be powerful, and it will be difficult, even for Serral, to take a really good fight.
Cure getting a bit of F2 insurance with his Liberator. Sieges that in the dead space to make sure he doesn't accidentally control that with a select all army key. Queen's going to drop creep over there. 3rd command center up. 4th and 5th barracks has now begun. And, I mean, I would be shocked if we see a 4th command center next. I think Serral, he's done his homework. Serral's like the best player at studying his opponents out of anyone. I always feel like what makes Serral so special is that he is he's the best coach. Like, he coaches himself, he studies his opponents, he remembers games better than anyone else. And I think he's going to be mentally already prepared for those 3 more barracks to go down in the next 30 seconds in the Terran base. And I think he's expecting that. I certainly am. I wonder how Cure looks to make this work. Against the Roach Warren, I think ideally you go 3 more barracks with Tech Labs, add Marauder's concussive shells, go for a like 180 supply plus push, and you really try to get close to maxed out before the big fight happens. But we'll see what he's got in mind. 3 barracks do go down right on time.
That's very accurate what you said. Even in WTL, where a lot of people will think like, Serral's the overwhelming favorite for everything and he can just show up and do his thing. Serral really gives respect to all of his opponents. No matter if people think he's going to win 100 out of 100 times, he'll still fire up a couple of their most recent games and make a couple of mental notes. But the Marines are already here. 2 Queens do disappear immediately. Serral has gone up to hive tech. There is no bailing speed yet. There are 0 bailings on the map. This is not even the moment I was really worried about for Serral, but Cure already finding some value out of his army, even before 1-1 upgrades, before combat shield. Nice movement on the Hellions too.
He's got to get out there.
And could be the start of a very good follow-up for Cure.
It was a good start. Time to leave, though. There we go. I was worried that he was just kind of kiting back, and I'm like, those guys have roach speed. They're chasing really well, but it's good because he spots the roaches, so he knows to not build Marines. He goes immediate Tech Labs. He moves out, cleans up the Overseer and the Overlord outside the base. So he's getting some good value, right? 2-1, even better than 2-1 in the trading. And Roach Ravager Ling Bane struggles with the max out timing. You're going to have these Roaches and Ravagers. Your Banelings kind of get stuck on them. They chew up a lot of supply. 3 supply per Ravager, 2 per Roach. Their damage is not great. Their range is very short. So it's awkward, but Blinding Cloud is going to be so early. It's not even 8 minutes, and his Vipers are on the way. Serral, how is your economy and tech both so good in this game? Show some chill, man. Give the Terran a chance to get his push going first. These Vipers are going to ruin the tank count. Q has got to have perfect bio positioning.
The nice thing about the Viper this early and when there are no ghosts to worry about, it's just good in everything. Blinding Cloud's amazing. Abduct's very useful too. If some tanks are just really annoying and you don't really want to take the all-out fight, just land on Abduct. And even if the medevac count gets a little bit crazy high, you can always spam a couple of parasitic bombs. Even this early, that is very annoying to deal with as a Terran. That Liberator from the early game has found its way into the main base and somehow does not get a single drone. Cure looked promising when he sniped those two queens. Things slowed down a little bit, but this is kind of his moment. And I'm sure that he was hoping that Vipers wouldn't be done yet, or maybe just done, but they wouldn't have energy. Well, it's quite the opposite, right? The Vipers are out, they have energy, but they can still maybe force a fight before some of the other hive tech upgrades are done, like Adrenal Glands.
Vipers are a little far away. Serral's got to wait. He's got to let those Vipers get in range. And he's going to do just that. Beautiful engagement for Serral, coming in with a nice spread. Blinding Clouds, one of them on a bit of the bio, not on the siege tanks as much, but the tanks are left on the front line. Marines, nice micro to pull those away, but Cure is outnumbered. One tank does survive, only takes 2 biles, no third bile to take it down on the right side. The Marines are going to try to push in. Cure knows he's on a timer. If he takes longer, the Vipers will get energy and get to go again, but he also can't be stepping on creep against mass Banelings. Serral trying to buy time for more Banelings to morph. Adrenal Glands and 2-2 not done for him. 2-2 about to kick in for Cure. So these next 30 seconds, this is the window where Cure wants to force the fight.
Honestly, that was really good by Cure. If he can continue to play that well, there is a chance that he's just gonna do it. The final Banelings have just exploded on that tank that survived the previous fight. There are a few more Zerg units showing up though. Cure now forced to go all the way back, and he is no longer within striking distance of that hatchery. Couple of corrosive balls. Cure micro this Marine so damn well against that crazy big army of Serral, even with a couple Blinding Clouds in the mix that obviously were mostly used on the tanks. I was impressed, and it really did feel that Cure was starting to maybe tip the fight in his favor, but it's the immediate reinforcements for Serral that have made the difference. And Serral obviously getting a lot of money from that gold base as well. And you think back of that Liberator, right? A bit of a shame that we threw it away like we did in the center or in the main base, because that Lib could have been very annoying on top of the gold base of Serral. While protected from the center, there are a couple of Marines and Marauders though looking for a snipe. Parabomb goes down, but Cure gets the hatchery.
Nice hatchery, keeps the drops alive as well for now. Spore crawlers have been built in that main base. Cure trying to unload on the edge. Of course, it's only a matter of time for those units to go down. A few stray Marines and Marauders rallying across the map there. A little sloppy for Cure. He's got to try to get some value here out of the Marines. Going to force the Spore Crawler to move, pull back to the edge, try to rejoin, trying to deny this hatchery with the Marines behind the southern base as well. Gets a few hatchery cancels. I mean, I love that Q is still finding little bits of value, but Ravager, Lingbane, Viper count is looking excellent with Adrenal Glands. 2-2, now 3-3 starting slightly before the Terran. Stuck on 3 bases. The main half mined out for Cure. His natural half mining out now as well over the next 30 seconds. That means his income's dropping while Serral secures a gold base. He secures the top left as well. As he gets to 6 bases, his income's just going to be absolutely soaring over 1,000 minerals extra a minute, which means every fight for him, he can replenish. Cure cannot. Cure needs to win with this army.
Yep, but Cure is also an absolute master of not quite winning with the army, but still somehow being alive in the game. But there are 40 Banelings now. It is incredibly hard to fight against a Zerg with 40 Banelings if you don't have a bunch of Liberators or Widow Mines everywhere. And the tank count is obviously nothing crazy, right? There's 3 tanks, but that's not going to make the difference. And perhaps the biggest problem for Cure is just that the entire center of the map is purple. Serral's got vision, and Serral sets up a little link. Well, not really many links, but a lot of Banelings and Zerglings stretching into the natural. Well, Cure was already committed pick. Now he's even more committed, and perhaps this just leaves him more space to build additional Marines and Marauders.
I didn't have anywhere to mine from anyway. I don't care. He's like 40 SCVs is all I need, right? But the Ling's going to follow it up. Serral realizes any trade away from the main fight is just going to be really good if he can get us around those Marines and Marauders. But southern base getting attacked. Cure very clumped on creep. He's got to pull the Marines back. He's got so many Marauders with concussive. It's kind of hard for Serral to jump on anything. I think Serral's doing the good, intelligent decision by just denying mining. Give up 2 of your bases. You've still got 2 fresh bases in the top left. Or at least relatively fresh anyway. The third is actually half mining out on minerals now. But he's denied 3 mining bases of Cure. Cure's got no mining right now. Like literally no minerals.
Not just no minerals, no gas either. 0 minerals, 0 gas. Well, what Cure does have is 112 army supply. Serral's got 30 or so Banelings, obviously in an amazing position, but Serral still needs to be a tiny bit cautious that he doesn't throw away everything. This was not quite the fight for Serral, but obviously any unit he kills is not really returning anytime soon. Cure does get the second base though, Baneling count now, actually only 8 banelings left, but 20 additional banes on the way. Serral's gonna have to clean it up a tiny bit, but obviously the counterattacks pick, they have really made all the difference.
+3 weapons frantically trying to be repaired there, but Kua keeps running out of money, so he can't repair it. Single Zergling almost taking it out. The Lings are on top of him. Kua's army is just being AFK'd on creep right now. The engineering base gonna burn down. +3 weapons did kick in time, though. The single Liberator trying to defend. Serral is all over this game, and Kua, well, he's made a good fight of it. Serral, I don't think he's happy at all. I can see on his camera a level of consternation that only comes with a man who holds himself to excessively perfect standards and has lost both of his first maps in his 2 best-of-3s today. But he's come out of it on top at the end, and that's all that matters. I'm sure he's going to be kicking himself for losing any maps today because Serral does have those ridiculous standards. But Kua put the pressure on, man. He made him sweat a little bit, and Serral showed that he was made of sterner stuff. We're going to be going into Kua in the bottom left side for Team Liquid in the final deciding match of Group A. His opponent in the top right, it is Shin. And Shin, of course, looking for a bit of a chance to redeem himself. Did not have the best showing in his first series with Kua. He had a great start to his second map, but he wasn't able to find any openings. He engaged head-on into a lot of frontal, heavily committed pushes from Kua. And I think we saw, right, as that Kua vs Serral series went on, the backstab started finding a lot of value, as well as Serral's choice at a few key points, I think, to just give up bases, fall back, and just force Kua to overextend into creep. And I think that worked out so very well.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is the game that we saw on Frostline, where Serral had a picture-perfect moment to show up with those links surrounding Marauders, tanks, fighting right before the planetary. In that second game for Shin, it felt that he was either always 5 seconds too early, or he was 5 seconds too late. He was just never there when he had to be. There were definitely opportunities. That first game was a bit of a nightmare. I don't know, maybe he just wasn't feeling it yet, but there was definitely some self-sabotage there too. The start was rough. But yeah, for them firing up 4 overlords when we have 14 free supply. You know, 1 overlord, okay, Piggy. 2 already not needed. 4 was way too much. That's 400 minerals. That's a base that you're just like not getting any value from at all. Shin is going to have to step it up because Cure clearly has been working on his TVZ, and it may not have been good enough yet to take down Serral in a macro game, but it was absolutely good enough to take down Shin. It should be closer than the first series, but I'm still leaning a little bit towards Cure. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you can't go against what we saw in the previous series, and a few Marines got hit by Banelings, but he won the games convincingly against Shin despite that. So I think Shin has to be a bit more assertive in the matchup, and Shin does usually play his best StarCraft when he's able to shove some roaches across the map, get some damage, and then macro behind it. And I think part of what takes away a bit of Shin's mojo in this kind of last few months of StarCraft is he's not having success with those roach pushes, you know? Katowice, was it 2023? 2024? Whichever one of those it was, where he just wrecked everyone, including Clem in the group stage. Only lost to Bunny very narrowly, and he's just basically do a roach push, get big damage game 1, macro behind it, overwhelm. Game 2, he'd open up really greedy while the Terran was being really safe with double Banshee openings. Once ahead, roll them in the mid game, you know? He's really confident at that stage, but he doesn't have the pull first, you know, 6 lings into the Ravagers and Roaches on 1.5 base economy. Is a lot of those builds he doesn't have faith in right now. So he's kind of forced to play with maybe a few ling backstabs, macro up a little bit more. And I think once he gets to the mid game, I want to see him just kind of start to be really mobile with his army, force Kua to reposition a lot. I think, like, you know, you don't always have to kill a lot with a counterattack. Sometimes you just move across the map, force him to reposition all of his forces and leave a lot of units at home. And then you just go back and look for a cleanup on the frontal army, right? It's not always as simple as smash army at the front of your base or the front of their base. Sometimes you just use it to take map control and get your opponent to kind of like split his army up too much.
Yep, Hatchery is about to finish up for Shin, which he desperately needs because he has been on 44 out of 44 for a bit. So it's a bit of the opposite of what we had earlier, where he built too many overlords this time. Perhaps it wasn't quite perfect, but this was a ever so slight delay. Overall, clean start, and that is what he is looking for, because it just has to be a little bit sharper, a little bit better. Sure, it's funny, because you were talking earlier, you said something in the cast, and there were too many things happening for me to really dial in on it, but sometimes he reminds me a little bit of Zest, where clearly he is so good and he is very efficient and he finds so many great ways to win. But you can also see things very obviously that even Cure can still do better. And then you wonder, it's like, man, if he cleans that up as well, then he's no longer just one of the best, then he should be the best, but it's obviously so hard to do everything right. But in a weird way, he reminds me of Zest, even though completely different race, completely different player. They have that in common, where they're clearly exceptional, yet they don't look flawless.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so hard to look flawless in StarCraft 2. I think every time we get in this sort of discussion about a player, because everyone has these holes, and some of them just never get fully fixed. Like, think about, like, Beyond, right? He'd always start his armor before his attack upgrade, and he'd kind of spam the two buttons one after the other and not have enough money to start his infantry attack. And it was like, for years, he'd just always be on, +2 armor, +1 attack. And you're like, come on, man, like, attack's a way better upgrade. You gotta break this habit. There's two things you gotta fix there. Press it always attack first, then armor second, and also double check, stop forgetting about your second upgrade. And then he fixed it for like a few months, and we were like, oh, this is so sick. And it was funny. I think he had like a bit of time off in the off season, and he went right back to going armor first, and then he went back into the old habit. I was like, no! It's so hard to reprogram something once you've been doing it for a decade plus, man. It's really difficult. I always give props to the players who can go back and reinvent themselves as a player. I've heard a lot of StarCraft 1 fans say that's why Flash was so great, is, he just had people trying to snipe him in Pro League for a decade, and he just kept finding ways to avoid getting sniped and always, having so much range and reinventing himself tournament to tournament. And I think that's something like, the likes of Serral have done, and very few other players. But Cure coming in with the Banshees now on that right side. Going to pick a few other drones off.
Yeah, Shin had a lot of things going already for him, but that 74 out of 74 supply block definitely went on for a little bit too long. So then he built 6 Overlords at once, and then after that you see 14 drones on the production tab. You're like, wow, he's going mad, but it's just not a good sign if you see 14 drones on the production tab this early. This meant that he could have been building a couple of those drones earlier. They could have gone to work a bit earlier. So not perfect macro on the side of Shin in a game where you'd say not a whole lot should be distracting him, but apparently whatever Cure has thrown at him has been enough to throw Shin a tiny bit of his A game.
On the other hand, luckily, playing devil's advocate, it was mostly extra gas mining and tech structures he was delaying, not minerals. So when it comes to like the order of miss macro, if you're missing drones mining minerals on your first 3 bases, that's disastrous, right? But at least it was like, okay, maybe his upgrades is like a little bit of extra gas for hydras and whatnot might be a bit later. Ling count should still be very good through this mid stage. Cure coming forward though. And look at that, 3 more barracks going down. Rotterdam! What? We've never seen this from Cure before. What is this?
Surprise Pikachu. But what makes Cure is that there is obviously so many different ways for him to play this, right? There are backup plans. Sometimes there is a quicker fourth, sometimes there's no fourth. As he does stim forward, he snipes a queen. He's getting close to the second queen. We don't want to see him be sloppy on the pickups here. And the man from Team Liquid is not, well, a good old 8 barracks setup with 1 starport, 1 factory as we go. Wow, Shin, by the way, 7 minutes, 22 seconds, fires up that hive as well. I guess he was patiently watching those games between Serral and Cure, and he's like, oh, so all I have to do is get a couple Vipers at minute 8 and drop a couple of Lightning Clouds and I'm good to go. Got it, roger that, and well, that's early for Shin, man, that's really early.
I really want to see him split army though, because what you want to do is you want to slow this push down. If you can get 30 lings into the natural or on the rally point now, loop around this army, you're going to slow this push down a lot. You don't want to fight until those Vipers or that 2-2's out, but Shin's still very front-on focus, and that was his downfall in the first series. I think the front-on focus here is a trap against an 8-Rax, because look, Q is setting up. Yep. If you can't get on top of him now, I mean, those tanks are marching forwards. The army for Shin not really achieving anything right now. 20 Zerglings, a few Banelings could do the same thing that his whole army is doing. But he's once again channeled 100%. Into a front-on engage.
Yeah, he's got so much at home. Like, imagine, Shin, you had 4 Banelings and 12 Zerglings on the other side of the map rolling into the third right now. That would slow him down a whole lot more than you having 80 Zerglings there. But Cure is still just waiting for his upgrades. He's going to push back the creep. He doesn't want to take that fight on creep. Seems like Shin is already thinking of just a massive surround on this army, and definitely a better spot to fight than what he was fighting on earlier today on Amygdala. I hope for Shin it's good enough.
Indeed, 2-2's not done for either player, but I like the way he's now intercepting the rally point. That's what we've been waiting for. He's already let a lot of army onto the front line, but this is an excellent fight for Shin on the reinforce. But look at this, the tanks and marines Cure patiently trying to bait him into a bad fight. Shin's got to be really careful. Oh, I love the queens coming around. The banshees thought they could clean up the rally. The queens going all the way off creep to get rid of those banshees.
Yeah, well, we might need those queens elsewhere, though. I'm a little bit worried that Shin is now also firing up an Ultralisk Cavern. That reminds me a little bit of that Robo and the Fleet Beacon earlier today. Like, yeah, eventually that could be awesome, right? But this army is still here. We're going to have to fight this army, and it's not going to have to be a so-so fight. I kind of feel like Shin needs an amazing fight to really buy some good time for himself and get some value out of that bottom right side base. Because right now he has lost the triangle. He has lost all that creep in the center of the map. For what, Pick? For what?
Yeah, I mean, he caught one tank and a handful of Marines. He's going to catch some more here. Nice ambush kill with a bit of a slow response there. Ling's catching so many tanks. Banelings rolling in from the Marines with a big flank. The tank position is getting broken, but a lot of Banelings go down. There's still some Marines up top. The rally down the bottom. Those Queens are going to have to pull away. And nice hot pickup in the north for Cure. The army reset for both sides. Both sides bruised, bleeding. Economically, Shin has 10 more drones, but he's only on 4 base. He just got his base mining in the bottom right. And there is a 4th command center, a 2nd factory finishing for Cure. He's got 3 started. Ultras are on the way. Dude, this is exactly what you were calling at the very start of the first Cure Shin series. Cure will end up in these games where he's kind of all in, but not quite. The game will get a bit weird, and that's what's happening right now.
There's a tiny opening in these mineral patches. It's a lot of depots over here, by the way, by Cure. You think that if you're Shin, it's actually so nice. Normally, you don't get too excited as a Zerg of killing a depot, but if you can take down 6, 8, 10 depots, you can actually supply block a Terran for an incredibly long time. And maybe those Ultras, with Guidance Plague now halfway done, can really make the difference. But 4 base against 4 base, Zerg versus Terran. No money in the bank at all for the Zerg, nowhere near maxed out. Doesn't get me very excited if I was a Zerg player or if I was a big Zerg fan. But perhaps Shin can just buy some time, find a couple of little pickups, stuff like this, an SCV here, damage that planetary a little. I'm worried. It just doesn't look as good as it should look for a Zerg.
He is making the best unit in the game, the Infestor, right now, that no one uses at pro level anymore unless Ghosts are out in the end game. Like, we don't see it. And, I mean, we saw how Cure ate some Banelings earlier today. I can imagine that Fungal could land big, right? It could land big. Few Vipers as well. Double Spellcaster, right? So we can start Parasitic Bombing the Medivacs. Blinding Cloud plus Fungal on the Bio, so they can't even pick up. Could be big. But good Overseer Snipe. Cure being annoying. And he's going for vehicle weapons. He's got just the one. No, he's got 2 factories, actually. So he's going to be pumping tanks 2 at a time. Shin, I think really the next fight is everything in this match, because the creep is not really respreading very well. You know, Shin has a decent army, but Q is going to push. You're going to have similar army supply, and it's all about the spells. How do the Zerg spells land on the Terran?
50 Marauders, that obviously packs a punch, and a couple of the Liberators could really make the difference, because Ultras are incredibly scary for Terrans if you don't have Ghost, but it's not like we're pure Marine here, right? We definitely have a decent amount of Marauders, tanks, maybe some Libs eventually. As you said, it really comes down to the spellcasters, and Shin is not exactly known for his spellcasting control, but I do think he got a lot better at it. And it seems like he's going to try to distract Cure a little bit as well, with a couple Lings and Banes at the triangle. The stuff that we were hoping he would bust out in the early mid-game, he's doing it now, and I still love to see it. And that perhaps can allow him to take a much better fight on his side of the map.
Yeah, he's going to jump forward. That tank getting good shots. The whole Bio army does stim. Those Vipers going to go in front. There we go. Nice Blinding Clouds going down from the Vipers, but it's a beautiful spready of tanks and Libs. Nice Blinding Cloud of the Marine Marauder, making them derp into the Banelings. Juicy hits there at the same time, intercepting the rally. Shin gets a monumental engagement. Ultras roll over the top. I think it's time to go Spire. Yeah, he's going Spire for Corruptors. Corruptors are the best anti-Liberator. Corruptor Ultra Spellcaster is a super good composition in this sort of low economy game, because Terran doesn't have mass planetary, doesn't have mass orbital. It's going to be so hard for Cure to fight back. He has to go just pure Marauder tank Lib to deal with the Ultras. And that's an army that doesn't have the long-term cost efficiency of Ghosts.
Yep, I like that Shin pulled back, by the way. I was worried after that good fight that he would then try to get a bit too excited and get on top of the planetary, but with Liberator still sieging up, him having absolutely zero anti-air on this side of the map, I'm very happy to see that he slowed things down a little, snuck out a few more drones. 3rd base is still wide open. He killed all those depots early. He's going to finish off the last few over here as he gets 5 SUVs. This is good by Shin. Sometimes we wonder why doesn't he do it a little bit earlier, but over the last 60, 90 seconds, he has been making all the correct plays. And Cure probably felt quite good about this game. And suddenly, he's going to have to slow it down a lot. Maybe he's going to very slowly try to take a 5th Perhaps you can almost give up on the triangle for a bit because you already lost all the depots there. You've mined a lot of resources. So why not focus a little bit more on the left side of that planetary and try to get your hands on that fresh base to get a few more ghosts and lips and all the good stuff.
Yeah, you could kind of seed the bottom side of the map a little bit and kind of push north along those base locations. It's going to be interesting. I mean, at this point, the Corruptors, though, the Ultraling Bane Corruptor is so scary. And remember, Ghosts are now 3 supply. That being said, Q is pretty good at setting up late game defense. Like, I feel like Q should be screwed, right? Like, completely dead looking at the game state. Because 48 workers, he just doesn't have the money. Shin's got all the money in the world. There's just this small part of me that goes, how often do we see Shin play the late game? And then I go, nah. I mean, as much as I doubt him against Protoss in late game, I think Hive-Tech's EVT, he's got plenty of experience. And Ultraling Bane, let's be honest, I know I've played more Zerg than the other races. I'm sorry, Zerg friends. I think we've got to admit it. Ultraling Bane's kind of an easy comp to use. Like, you kind of just A-move these boys. It's not really about fancy control. It's just about don't headbutt into a choke point. You know, try to find a good angle where you've got good surface area. A-move from 2 sides. Usually don't A-move from just one angle, but he's going to go for it.
Yeah, Planetary is about to finish up. First Liberated does die rather quickly. Blinding Cloud is decent, but Cure did have a monstrous army, though. I don't know if Shin can really go that deep off creep into all these planetaries. Just killing the base on the left side and then disengaging, I truly believe, is the right play. Because Cure, sure, only had 47 SCVs, but if he's close to maxing out, that means that you're looking at 150 pure Terran army supply. And now he does have ghosts. Secure is absolutely still in it. Losing that planetary does sting a little. But look at that chase. Look at the size of this Terran army. And yeah, ghost resupply. Sure, we'll just have less workers, I guess.
This Infest has done nothing this entire game. Now's your moment, Fungal Boy! Fungal Boy! No, it's not a very impressive Fungal. The counterattack down the bottom may be a little more impressive, but the lib in the tank there. Planetary on the other base should be enough. It's time to give this base up. Fungal's trying to go out, but without a big committed engage at the same time. Fungal's not going to really achieve that much. Snipes on the Ultras. Oh, my lord. Oh, my lord. 2 Ultras go down. Third one almost dies. Infesta's going down as well. And as I said, yeah, Kua had a much worse setup, but he had this one giant army, and Shin threw a few too many units away. He's got to win this fight, and I don't think he's got the numbers to do it. That being said, wait, Corruptors cleared the libs. Medevac's getting low. There's enough Ultras left over. Great Fungal on the Ghosts. Oh, my gosh.
That is amazing. That right there is what Shin was looking for. The Corruptors really making the difference. First gunning down those Liberators, then landing the Fungal, making it impossible for Cure to save all these units. And Cure kept so much supply at home that it allowed Shin to take a really good fight. Let's not do the exact same thing as you just did, Shin, where you basically had something good. I don't know about that move at all, Piggy. That is 4-5 Corruptors going down.
He just unzipped. He just unzipped and tried to wee on his base, man. That's insulting, Shin. I mean, come on, you're playing good, but that's a little cocky. You gotta not do that in front of the enemy army. Against Protoss players, sometimes you catch them with not much that shoots up. When there's a big ball of Marine and Ghost there, you gotta respect it. Corruptor's gonna come around the left side, looking for another wave. But looks like this Ultraling Bane finds the third, the triangle base you were talking about, saying maybe you should give it up. The Liberator will defend it eventually, but you're losing SCVs every time. And Shin's got decent income. 3,500 minerals a minute. If Shin can secure these northern bases now, he's going to keep that income going for the next 5-10 minutes of this game, and there should be no path for Cure back into it. But interestingly, Shin's building like spines and spores everywhere, which is kind of bizarre.
He's been doing that for a little while, and it was indeed not truly needed, but hey, it's not hurting him all that much, because those bases in the bottom right side, they obviously have so many resources left. As long as he can keep those going, he is going to be happy. It looked very dicey for Shin for a little bit while Cure was chasing him, but yeah, the final Fungals, the Corruptors getting on top of the Liberators really did make all the difference. This is the orbital from the main base, by the way, because no orbital has died in this game, only a planetary has died. So this is the orbital from the main, but now Cure is also forced to lift this orbital on the left side. Shin has a crazy amount of banelings. He might go for the planetary here.
That's a crazy amount. He wants to get on top of the bio. The banelings try to split. These tanks are ruining them. Oh my lord, dude, that was a Ragnarok of banelings. That brought me back a few years to before he changed his name to Shin, where he was famous for making 100 banelings and rolling them into choke points. That was a crazy wasteful decision, man.
What is happening in this game? Like, it looks good for Cure, it looks good for Shin, looks good for Cure, looks good for Shin. They just keep kind of throwing armies on the other side of the map, and that was not it. Like, if he would have just clicked all those banes near the PF, very expensive, and at least he takes another base down, and Cure becomes even more broke than he already is. Now we're just gonna sacrifice 40 banes for almost nothing. Maybe he got a few tanks, and that means that Cure with his 32 SCVs, it may not seem like much, but it's honest work, especially if they're backed up by a couple of mules, is still, in a weird way, kind of in this game. Ghost count currently 3. That's obviously not high enough. He needs a little bit more. Shin can be wasteful, but he cannot be too wasteful.
Yeah, he's so far. I mean, Q is so dead. You're going to need to do that move once or twice more as Shin to really let this game one slip away. But it's not confidence boosting for him. That, you know, you've got control of the game and then bam, you're finding. I said it like 10 minutes ago. I was like, Q is really good at setting up a defense. And I felt like you know, Shin's not a super expert in the slow late game, right? He's more of a momentum-based player a lot of the time. But I wasn't expecting a fight like that this late in the game. I was actually expecting it much earlier if it was going to happen. The Marauder drop coming out. You can always outrun those Corruptors, but Marauders don't do a lot of damage versus Zerglings. Tank goes spready, 125 army supply. Trying to rebuild the SCVs is Cure. Cure is famous, by the way, for having, like, draw games versus Dark and, like, 50-minute turtle games that just, like, you know, they would always go down to the wire. And Cure would, unfortunately, more often than not, end up losing to, like, back in the day, Dark would, like, siege him with Broodlords from, like, 2 screens away, attacking his own creep tumors and stuff like this, you know? But Cure has so much experience in this sort of weird late-game, low-economy Terran versus Zerg. And, you know, Shin's got to be careful.
Well, I'm just looking at Shin as I'm following your camera, obviously, and it almost feels that he's got so many different ideas, right? He's like, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go there, no doubt. And it's just like, I get stressed out just looking at him. This army has been going back and forth for over a minute and a half, obviously not accomplishing anything. The only thing that it kind of allows to do is to let Cure stabilize, get even more battle units, and you look at that army supplies right now, Pig, 151 army supply. Tanks are, what the hell has this army of Shin been doing? It's been derping back and forth for like 2 minutes, and sure, maybe he's delaying a 6 base, but Cure wasn't thinking about this base yet.
Yeah.
Cure was just, can I max out? Can I get another dream army? Can I claw my way back into this game? Well, at this point, he's more than back into it, because he's got an incredibly impressive army. Infestor gets picked up as well. This looks good for Cure, man. Like, Shin has done
does.
nothing.
Yeah, Shin was just like, please step outside of your house. Like, he was basically pacing on the footpath outside Cure's house with a hammer in his hand, going, "Come outside! Come out and face me!" You know, and Cure wisely was like, "I'm not going to open the door. I'm going to call the police and wait till they arrive." You know, the rule 101 of when there's a crazy Zerg outside your house is don't run outside and try to fight them. And Cure instead, he's built his Home Alone traps now, right? He's got tanks, libs, turrets, like going across the entire map now. And he's like, I'm just going to lift my orbital whenever you run in, kite backwards, and try to bait you into taking an awful fight. We've talked about this concept over the years called chucking a Zerg, where when you're miles ahead, you've just got to make sure you don't headbutt into a bad fight. Oh gosh, I don't know if this is it for Shin. The Corruptor's getting good damage on the medevacs, but there's so much on the ground. The Ultra's starting to thin out. Shin trading. The orbital lifts off before it dies. The tail end of that fight, kind of nasty for Shin. He does have more income than Cure, so you could argue anything approximating an even trade is a good trade for him. But I don't know, man. He's down about 9,000 in the units lost. Cure is going to try to push now. Looks like Cure is not going to patiently wait it out. He's just going to go. He's going to say, all right, let's push across the map. I think the Remax will be just enough for Shin to deal with it.
That would honestly be crazy by Cure, because he's got 1 medevac, and there is no way that he's going to beat a Zerg with this many bases on creep with 1 medevac. So in the end, I guess Shin is happy with how that went. He's like, I've got a big bank, I got 6k minerals, 2.5k gas or so. Not enough to really throw away everything and not get anything done. But this was a bit of a trade, and that kind of a trade is what you're looking for as a Zerg. If you're the one sitting on a bank and the Terran had nothing, Cure could absolutely not counter, man. With a wounded army that can't stim 1 time without just getting absolutely A-moved. I think Shin, all things considered, it looked very scary at first, but he should have peace with how that fight went. This I don't understand, because this base is pretty much mined out. We really don't need to lose too many units here. It's tricky, but I think that top left, that's what you want to battle over, right? Because this has been a 24-minute game. First 3-4 bases, they're going to be pretty much mined out anyway. So the top left side base, that's the one that you really want to battle over. And if you trade out some units and kill some SCVs and stop him from mining from it, that's already a good enough victory.
Shin just killed his own Ultra. Oh, and he's replaced it with 4 Infestors. Okay, interesting. Don't see that every day. That's yeah, that's crazy. Broodlord's gonna poke forward now. Does he have Overseers with him? He's not got an Overseer. Okay, he's got 8 Overseers on the map. None with the Broodlords. There we go. Now they're coming forward. He's got him with the Corruptors. This is really good. Using the Broodlords, it makes it so difficult because Q, it doesn't have Thors, doesn't have Vikings. He's gonna have to deal with it with Ghosts, which never feels good because you got to get in range to snipe and dance in and out, and those Broodlings are, of course, going to do so much damage, not to mention potential tank-friendly fire. Bioarmy in the south, Kua goes in. This is,
big.
I call this, no medevacs. There's no escape for these guys, but it's worth it. He's getting good damage.
You could honestly even go further because Shin's entire army and Shin's entire focus right now is on the top left. And we did mention how important this seems like Cure has picked that one up as well. And he's like, you know what, I'm just going to temporarily evacuate this, make sure I don't lose my orbital. And if you really want to fight somewhere near this planetary, run into all my tanks. Or let me just get a tiny bit more anti-air. But yeah, I would not have hated if that bio squad in the bottom right that was already stimming anyway would have also tried to get the bottom right side base of Shin. Maybe you get a few of the spines. Some damage on the hatchery where you can finish it off later. Widow mine shot gets not a whole lot. Oh, it's a unique game, and I still don't hate it for sure, man. Oh, that's a good Widow mine shot as well. But the
Yeah, he
ghost count
retargeted
is back
that.
up to 12, and Viking count is now starting to get up there. I'm starting to become a Cure believer, and I have been for a bit at this point.
Dude, with that bank, like, I still am just like there is no way Cure should win this game, but I'm with you. There is definitely a chance. There is definitely a chance. He's shown patience. Shin has not really used the momentum as quickly as we would have expected. Oh, tanks being left out in the open, though. That could be a problem. This terrain's really good for the Broodlords. But Snipe's coming in. Okay, only one Broodlord goes down, though. Tank-friendly fire on the Ghost is big. A couple Ghosts go down already. And in that top left, 15 SCVs go down. New base has landed in the bottom, though. Mules are pretty good in games like this, but he's only got 4 orbitals. Oh, he's going to try and fight these Ultras with Snipes and Marines and Marauders. 1 Ultra goes down, 2 Ultras go down. 3 Ultras fall. The Ghosts and Marauders stand strong. Those tanks still there on that left side as well. Shin struggling to finish off Cure right now. They're just Terran, you know, hanging in, surviving. And Shin's kind of like, come on, man, just give me that big opening to jump on you. I think Burrowed Infestors would be amazing because Cure has so few scans, but he's building turrets out front. He's trying to scan. It's Infestors on the high ground. Broodlords throwing those Broodlings out. And even though Broodlings have been massively nerfed over the last year and a half, so they don't do much damage, the direct Broodling damage as well as the range and the friendly fire of the siege tanks on their own units is what's really effective.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Shin that he lost that bottom right side base and those ultras, and you're like, okay, that could happen, right? You don't want to take a game-deciding fight that's bad, but I do feel that he should have pounced on those tanks. They were all by themselves, they were naked. Broodlords could have just tried to get a couple shots off. Unfortunately for Shin, he got nothing in return, but what he does still have is also a terrifying army as he lands a monstrous fungal, and he's going to try to renew it. Blinding Cloud as well. The Blinding Clouds are really good.
Big fungal, or EMP, I should say. There was a fungal to start it. Great EMP on the Infestors, but those Ghosts need to land those snipes. The Broodlings trying to hang on. The Broodlords start to get sniped. Hydra's being remaxed on. What? He's remaxing on Hydra Link. Not what I was expecting. I think the Broodlords have done it, though. I mean, with just a few Vikings and a handful of Ghosts and Marines, Kiewit did not have what he needed. 28 minutes, a game which I thought was largely over at about 12 minutes, but Kiewit hangs in there and makes Shin really sweat it out.
I think Cure is quite confident with his regular 8 racks against Shin, so I'd be surprised if he starts doing something completely different, but hey, anything is possible. Potentially the last game of the day, hopefully the second last game of the day. In the end, Shin did what he had to do, Piggy, and that is take the 1-0 lead in this all-decisive best-of-3.
Indeed. Going to be an early extractor trick. Going for a 15 hatchery, so it looks like a 15-15 build for Shin. 15 hatchery into 15 Overlord. So another extractor trick will go down. Yep. Classic build order. This one allows you to get very early queens out. More of a 2-base friendly build than 3-base usually. If you do go 3-base with it, you often want to delay your link speed or skip it entirely and go straight roaches. We'll see what Shin's got in store for us. A lot of cheeky 2-base pushes that Serral used to do off this as well. So we haven't seen too many people experiment with those. I think that's probably the one thing in the last 2 years of Zerg versus Terran where Serral has far and away been, you know, the best, most consistent player in that matchup, was him experimenting with this opening and bringing up like 14 different variations off it. There was a period where, I don't know if you remember, I think it was like, I can't remember the map name, but I just remember there was like a few months where every Clem vs Serral was like tunneling claw roaches running around Clem's base and like Nidus swarming up and stuff, and just like Clem running around chasing his own tail while Serral played like he was Bly or something. It's really fun. So I wonder if Shin's gonna bring out one of those Serral special tactics builds.
That'd be fun. But yeah, everything that we wanted to see from Shin a little bit earlier. He didn't do it at first, he did do it later. Once he had Hive Tech, once he had some Ultras out, and maybe that's just what he needs, right? He needs some of those big units at home to feel safe and sound, and that's when he's a bit more comfortable in splitting off a lot of the links and the banelings and start attacking that third base, and especially that triangle. He got really good value there. It's hard to kill it because it's an orbital, and you obviously don't have a lot of anti-air there as a Zerg, but getting all those SUVs, getting all the depots, forcing your opponent to pay attention to it nonstop, always leave like a tank and a liberator behind a bit later. That is a lot of supply that Cure has, but wasn't really participating in any fights. So you're like, yeah, he's 150, 160 army supply Terran, but not all of it is there. And then obviously in the end, just not enough of it was good against the Brood Lords. So what we wanted to see from Shin, he definitely gave it to us just a little bit later.
Indeed. Big thanks, by the way, to Blixen, the $50 donation going directly towards the prize pool, and Comeback TV for the big raid as well. Really appreciate those in the French community watching and supporting the tournament. Two Lings snuck across here. The SCV was unable to block the third for too long. You're okay to go for a delayed third usually with this build, but yeah, I mean, Shin here was just realizing you're going to block my base, but you're not going to have much at home. Forces an SCV pull, denies mining, gets the third up at a good time. Ling speed's now on the way. Shin just uses a 15-15 here to build less Zerglings than normal and do a pressure and get his third up. I mean, this is just an excellent adjustment from the first series, and I love to see it because Shin has always been the leading edge of clever Zerg openings to give him leads and advantages.
Yep, and even if Zergling speed is a little bit later, at this point it doesn't matter, right? Because he's already got that drone on location that is becoming a hatchery. Queens are obviously going to do a fine enough job in keeping the drone safe for now. But definitely, I would say out of the 4 games we've seen between these two, by far and away the best opening for Shin, the best start. Yeah. And this is obviously where you want it in the all-decisive last best of 3 of the group. You're up one map away from making it into the playoffs. This looks really promising for Shin. And let's see how that mid-game treats him.
Reaper going through that third base. Hellions on the right side, Reaper on the left. Lings do move to respond. Good point from chat as well. Hold on. Hellions are there. Bit of analysis from chat. They point out this was the map where Serral 3 racks. Actually, I don't think this was. I think it was ley lines where Serral got 3 racks. It's a very similar layout of the bases, guys, in the chat. But definitely, if you are worried about 3 racks, 15-15 is a very safe build against that. So this is like there's so many advantages to this build, but spawning pool being 11 seconds earlier than a normal hatch gas pool, obviously that's going to keep you way safer.
This was the last game between Serral and Cure, where we were wondering if he was going to do it, but he didn't do it. Casual 6 Overlords on the way for Shin. He did just lose one, so obviously you have to keep that in mind, but that's still a lot of empty supply. He's going to fire up a few more links, but he has a good economy. He's just got a good start into this game, and honestly, shouldn't take too much damage. Throughout the day, we can definitely see that Cure is not a very big believer in fighting too much with the Banshees. Maybe it's just too hard against the Giga Chat Spore, as the cool kids call it. Just kind of uses them, fires a couple shots, gets 2, 3, 4 drones, maybe a creep tumor or 2, and at that point he just sends them home. So Shin should really just have more to work with. The first time that Cure is going to make one of those move outs that he has been making for such a long time in this matchup, Shin's just going to have more. And perhaps this time he will have that confidence to then immediately have some units on the other side of the map to run into the third base and distract Cure and make it impossible for Cure to micro his Marines as much as he would love to in the top and bottom side of the map.
Indeed. Quick 4th base for Shin off that nice opening. Double Evo at 5:30, which is pretty well timed. You know, it's not far behind the double engineering bay of Cure. Double Banshee slows all this stuff down. So you're going to have a nice kind of very typical opening for Cure. Nothing too crazy for him. Whereas Shin is like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, try to survive with the quick Bane speed, get into the double upgrades, and I think on Amygdala especially, we almost always see people take this right side hatchery, because if you take the 4th up the top, you are gonna get pushed from that tower and along these ledges and along these edges can get kind of nasty. I think it's a decent wide open area, but normally we see players expand both sides at once, 4th and 5th, and then they just give one side up, counterattack the other. against the big pushers, but he's really not shown an inclination to do that. He doesn't believe in the counterattacks. He's shown in his style, no, I want to fight front on, and I want to defeat you that way. And the fact that he's committed to that 4th up top, and now the 5th on the gold in the middle, which is incredibly vulnerable, he has to win the frontal fights.
Nice job here with the Zerglings, and he's actually moving some of them back so he doesn't eat the monstrous shots. Really feeling it, what Pure is showing us here in game 2 on Amygdala. He's only lost a single drone in the first 7 minutes of this game. You compare it to some of the other starts he had, that's mega, that's massive. Pure adding in Rex number 6, 7 and 8 the way we expect him to. I wonder if the Queens can make their way over in time to maybe save this hatchery. I think the Banshees are wasting shots here, by the way, Pick. Maybe they should have just clicked on that hatch, because now the Queens are here. I mean, I feel like Cure just took the bait there, right? Shin is just like, hey, you should really attack these links, and he did. Now he doesn't even get the cancel on the gold.
Yeah, I don't think he really believed. Normally when you go for one of these bases, you assume the Queens are going to get there in time, and I think he's just like, yeah, go for the Lings. But yeah, we get to see everything. We realize there was a missed opportunity there. Tank Marine in the north. Nice corner for that tank. That tank position is so good, man. The Lings can barely get at it there. Reaches almost to the hatchery. Cure already getting his pushes going. His 8 racks are out front his base. He's not trying to hide it. He's just trying to go, go, go. But the Baneling speed is here. And the Banelings on the Marines. And it was a big feature in their first series, but it was happening after Cure was way ahead in that first series. So it didn't matter. In this case, it's Cure's first push getting shot down. And this is such a turnaround from the first series. Shin showing the adjustments that he needed to make. The Ling Bane jumping on top. Cure, luckily there's no overseer. The Banshees can keep him alive, but it feels like the wind's taken out of his sails. He's going to have to go for plan B, plan round 2. Start the 2-2, remake our tanks, make our marine counts, try to get it back up. And Shin on 81 workers, starting his own 2-2 just seconds later. Infestation Pit. As long as he does nothing but mass army, I think he's in a great position to take away this game. Oh my goodness, his gold's even mining, Roddy. What the hell?
Yeah, I like the idea of Cure taking down those rocks, and maybe he can slowly start taking control of the center. And make no mistake, I think this game looks incredibly bad for Cure, by far and away the worst that any of these games have looked. But maybe he can get that higher tank cut up that you alluded to, and then we can slowly take control of the center. We can deny that gold from mining. Perhaps Shin is indecisive once or twice, and Cure can find some better trades, but that first move out was just disastrous. Shin just had way too much. I think once more Shin could have probably snuck a couple units into the third of Cure, because Cure had nothing there. At this point, the only thing that Cure can do is slow things down a tiny bit, build as many units as you possibly can, 12 Marines at a time, extra tanks, extra medevacs, and give himself a real army again. And, you know, we're starting to reach that point where he already has the real army. Game looked horrific. I think it's still problematic, but he's obviously allowed to dream. 17 Banelings, Shin's going for it immediately.
Oh, he pulls the trigger straight away. The Marines pull a bit far back. I think they left the tanks out in the lurch a little bit. I think if Cure held his ground out front, that'd be very different. I also think it'd be very different if he made combat shields, Rotterdam. These Marines, what sort of military upgrades? Drilling claws before they give you a shield. That is insane. 45 hit point Marines, they are so vulnerable.
Oh my goodness. Obviously the man did not realize. I didn't even really realize either, but that makes sense why that first move out was so disastrous, and he was even having a hard time at home when he started unloading those units. Does get 1 or 2 good tank shots off, but that is one of the most important upgrades outside of Stim, probably the most important. But Stim you always realize immediately. Combat shield you don't realize that quickly. He's got over 70 Marines pick, and he's still building 12 at a time. Shin is counterattacking in the third at this point, by the way, and he's gonna see if he can find his way into that mineral line. It's just a couple links, but it's enough to keep Cure busy.
Indeed, Banshees on the bottom right as well. The Queens are a little slow to respond. 6th hatchery may go down. 4th hatchery up top is going to go down to the Marines. Dude, if he wins this game without combat shields, this is going to go in the annals of StarCraft history. In 8 racks, 3 base, mass Marine all in with a handful of tanks, no combat shields. But of course, Shin has something to say about that. He's going to roll in, clear out the third. The Lings wrapping around. This is the situation where combat shields make such a big difference. Oh my gosh, in the middle!
That's a lot of Banelings. You're obviously using that creep, getting a tiny bit of an extra speed boost, finding some good connections. If you're curious, honestly done very good for a man without combat shields. It's impressive how well he's hanging in there after this game already looked so bad to begin with. But at this point, it's really starting to look like it is just all over for the man who looked clean, who looked good in that first best of 3. Took the 1-0 lead over Serral as well. Now losing all those SCVs. just not having a backup plan, right? There's no goals, no lips. This army is gonna have to get the job done, and he does realize combat shields are on the way, but it's still gonna take a little while before it's done, and he has to face a high-tech Zerg. I think a couple of Vipers are out as well. Okay, Hydra rally not that good, but we do have Blinding Clouds, maybe a Parabomb, maybe an Abduct. All of that is available to Shin.
Good counterattack again for Shin. He just pulls back, gives up the gold, and he's going to ruin that mineral line. That's a solid 10 SCVs, lifted base. There's nothing mining on the third cure right now. In the dumpster, economically, he's got a smaller army supply, and there's Vipers. I mean, even parasitic bombs working on the medevacs over time are going to be a huge problem. That being said, combat shields is about to arrive. This is after you spend winter in the trenches, and then spring comes around, and then the fur coats arrive from the logistics headquarters, and you're like, thanks, guys, a little bit late.
Well, he still has a tiny shot. It's obviously still not looking too good for Cure. His economy is in shambles. Similar to that last game. Unlike last game, he doesn't have a bunch of ghosts and liberators and Vikings that really allow him to dream. His army is not bigger, but Shin still needs to be a tiny bit careful because Shin doesn't have a lot of money in the bank. And if he takes a really bad fight where he loses a lot of banelings, this game could theoretically still get close. But obviously it shouldn't. Here come the Vipers, here come the Lynx, Banes, Hydras, and this should be Shin storming into the playoffs of the Piggy Cup.
Hydra Ling coming from the left and the bottom as well. It was basically a 270-degree surround. A brilliant engage for Shin. And you know what? I mean, when you've got numbers like that, they're all brilliant engagements. As long as you come from more than one angle. And he came from like 4 angles, which was just perfect. Just the cherry on top of the cake that was a huge adjustment in the early game to his build order. Really good shutting down of everything. And just, I mean, light and day. The first series, it felt like Shin woke up on the wrong side of the bed, was getting wrecked. Couldn't get his third base down, was losing multiple drones to a single Reaper. And this series, he completely turns that story upside down and shows us the Shin that we know from a couple months ago, dominating the online scene, beating the best players in the world, including the world champion repeatedly. Hats off to Shin. He is going to get through in the final deciding match and get the second seed from Group A into the playoffs. GG, well played, Shin.